Welcome to Time Travel 12 and a third look at some of the cine film taken by Ken Robbins, this time from 1973 and 1974, visiting Snetterton, Silverstone, Blackbushe, Snetterton and Crystal Palace. One of the good things about the early 70s was you could get away with wearing extremely silly trousers. Nobby Hills took full advantage of this with a nice pair of vertically striped Lionel Blairs, as he readies Mike Hutchison in the new Hound Dog 6 for a bleach burnout. Alan Herridge was in the other lane with Firefly. Hound Dog replaced the blue 354 car from 72 and was powered by the ex-Firefly 392. Firefly now had a Garlett's elephant motor, as Peter Billington motions Alan forward for a far burnout. This action was taking place at the Gunfilters season opener at Santapod on April the 1st, 1973. There were only 3 cars entered in Top Fuel. Both Firefly and Hound Dog had qualified with identical 853s. Hound Dog took this first round matchup as Firefly lost far. Then Dennis Priddle in Mr. 6 came round for a bleach burnout and a bye run into the final. For this meeting, Dennis chose to run without the front bodywork, which made the car look reminiscent of Tudor Rose. He qualified with a 7.05, and everybody was eager to see the season's first 6. In the final, against Hound Dog, he ran a 6.96, as Hound Dog pulled a wheel stand and slowed to an 8.74. Moving on, we're now at the DJ and Radio Monthly meet on May the 13th. Ken was a bit slow with his cine camera as he missed the huge wheel stand pulled by Colin Mullen, which broke the front wheel of Invader on its return to Earth. Dave Stone in T-Rap had bigger tyres fitted and really began to produce quick times in 73. Here he comes out against Dorset Horn. 1973 was a good year for pro stock. Kevin Pillin had broken up and sold his Pure 7 altered and purchased Dave Rizik's Carl Bassey Kid Camaro. The 427 was removed and replaced by an all-new L88 black motor bored out to 440 cubic inches and filled with all the right goodies. The car was given a black paint job and renamed Satan's Toy. Gary Goggin had imported a 71 Camaro from the States, previously run by Don Wolfson. Gary had pulled the car apart, rebuilt the back half of the chassis and fitted the 427 from his Corvette. We're now at the Hot Car Big Go meet on the 27th and 28th of May, which featured a 7-car Top Fuel eliminator. Priddle had 2 cars entered, Mr. 6 and his newly imported Mr. Revel, complete with sparkling new 417 aluminium Donovan. Yet another newly imported car was Richard Smith's 69 Chevelle, originally run in the States by Frank Russo. It had a 427 Rat under the bonnet. Tony Dixon was joining in the Pro Stock fun with Money Hungry. Dennis Priddle brings out Mr. Revel, resplendent in one of Mexray's superb paint jobs for a qualifying blast, turning 711 at 204 miles an hour, the second spot behind Skilton. First round of Top Fuel, and and Roland Pratt in the old Revolution 3 car, red lit, giving the win to Hound Dog. Then the two fiddle cars come out. Mr. Six was being driven by Tony Gain, who hadn't driven a dragster since 1966, and that was a 500cc Rudge engine machine. On the green, Dennis was out first, but Tony stayed with him, recording an excellent 7:45 173 to Dennis's 7:20 198. Only one semi-final was run as the sky darkened, bringing rain to end the meeting. It was Skilton in the new Revolution 4 and Firefly. Firefly team had really tipped the can in an effort to beat Skilton, and you can see the flames from the headers, but Heritage slept on the line as Skilton ran a 6:85 at 205 to Firefly's 7:45 at 210, which took top speed of the meet. The second semi-final was run at the G-Max meet on June the 17th, thankfully under sunny skies. Dennis Priddle comes out against Mike Hutchison. The 392 in Hound Dog was no match for Mr. Revels Donovan, and Dennis took the win. Unfortunately, Clive couldn't make this meeting, so Dennis soloed to take the top fuel eliminator. Later in the day, Hound Dog ran a match race with Mr. Revel. Although Dennis took the win, the Hound Dog team were ecstatic at their time, as they had broken into the sevens with a vengeance, running 7:52, 196 miles an hour, knocking a good half second off their previous best. This Pro Stock matchup went to Gary Goggin, who beat Kevin Pillin with a whole shot 11:25 to Satan Toys quicker 11:23. Brings out Firefly, but breaks the rear axle 10 feet off the line. This is the new Plymouth Barracuda of the Rose Brothers, and was fitted with the 440 motor from Kevin Pillin's Pure 7 Altered. produced quite a bit of smoke. I'm not sure if it was coming from the tyres or the engine. Now for a look at a balloon, as we get ready for a change of venues to Silverstone at the NDRC's first international held on June the 24th. 170 competitors, including several Swedish and German entries, put pressure on the overworked and underpaid NDRC officials and marshals, but by mid-afternoon the meeting really clicked into gear, making it one of the best scenes so far in this country. Over from Sweden, Born Anderson's Opel Manta was a welcome sight for the funny-starved English crowd. Smoky burnouts and mid-8-second runs delighted the fans. From Germany, Willi Hestermann in Mafia Mouse. The injected rat Topolino comes out against Rick Fielding in the Imagination Topolino. Rick was one of those racers who could get lots of horsepower from small engines, but 1.5 litres of Ford against 7 litres of Chevy just wasn't fair, and Mafia Mouse pulled away at mid-track. Granny, what is it? This Hemi-powered giant go-kart was Mark Stratton's latest creation, driven by Ed Shaver. It was in fact a rear-engine funny car, still waiting for a body, running in top dragster. Ed ran a good 9.23, 148 miles an hour, but was having handling problems. Roland Pratt was there in Revolution 3, but not running in competition. Top Fuel action consisted of a best of 3 between Clive Skilton and John Anderson. That strange-looking device on Clive's roll cage is a movie camera, and if you've seen the Castrol film, Drag on a Summer's Day, you'll have seen the results. Everyone expected a 6 from Skilton, but an off-the-trailer 6.77 at 211 miles an hour was something else. John Anderson followed with a 7.72 at 180. John Whitmore, in his BMC Dragonfly, comes out for a run against Ray Hoare in Saxon. Ray was on top form at this meeting, running a best of 9.33 at 164 miles an hour. Final of Pro Stock saw Kevin Pillin against the Swede Gun Back. Gary Goggin was helping Kevin out for this matchup, having been knocked out in the semis. In a close race, Satan's Toy just took it with a slower 11.09 to Gun Back's 10.99. Top fuel matchup went to John Anderson as the fuel pump packed up in Skilton's car. So with 1 win each, it was all down to the final. Snetterton ran a best ever 6.61 to the Swedes slowing 8.71. Equally fantastic was Clive's top end charge, thundering 217 miles an hour, only 1 mile an hour off Heritage's outright UK record. In the top comp semi-final, Freddie Whittle, in the newly repainted shutdown, beat Matthew Mouse with a 9.26 to the Topolino's 9.61. But Freddie was shut down in the final by Bourne Anderson in the Opel Manta funny car. 2 weeks later, it's back to Santa Pod for the BDR and HRA Internationals. Held over 3 weekends, the series went south to HMS Dallas for the second weekend, then back to Santa Pod for the finals. Stars of the series were the American visitors, including these 2 funny cars. The world's #1 funny car driver, Don the Shoe Shoemaker, came over with one of his fiberglass creations called Stardust. The newly repainted Yellow Beast was one of a stable of 6 such machines, campaigned by the man from Chicago, Illinois. Power for the Barracuda-bodied flopper came from an Ed Pink paired 426 Hemi, opened out to 490 cubic inches, driving through a 2-speed Lenco. Joining Don was Paula Murphy with her STP-sponsored Plymouth Duster funny car. Again, an Edward Pink powered the car with 2-speed Lenco. Both funny cars remained in this country after the internationals. Alan Herridge took over the driving of Stardust, whilst the STP car was ably driven by Owen Hayward as part of the Hound Dog team. Paula Murphy was first out to check out the strip conditions in the STP car, and after the crowd-pleasing burnouts, ran a 7.97 at 185 miles an hour. Then it was back to the pits to beat out a badly battered sump, thanks to the Santa Pod top-end bump. Don Shoemaker was eating blowers in Stardust, splitting one in half on the line and chewing up another at the top end after an easy 9-second run. This time a blower had been borrowed from Firefly. Phelps lost some weight as he guided the car back after the long smoky burnouts. Then Don stormed to a 7.50 at 191 miles an hour. Then it was time for the first funny car match race. Side-by-side smoky burnouts brought the crowds to their feet. This was the first American funny car race seen in this country. Shoemaker took the win with a 7.21 at 202 miles an hour to miss STP's 7.82. The cars look a bit slow in this film as Ken was playing with a slow motion button on his camera. Out Stardust again and executed a far burnout. Stopping halfway up, he turned round and burnt out for the benefit of the people at the top end, while the fire marshals attended to the fire at the start line. Then he turned round again for one final burnout before leaving for home due to race commitments. Wilcox was over from the States to drive Mr. Rebel, being the original driver of the car, while Dennis Priddle ran Mr. 6. Returning to England from Sherman Oaks, California, was Tony Nancy with his Revoliner Top Fuel dragster. Tony had last been here for the drag festivals of 1964 and 65. And this was Tony's first rear-engine car since running the Radical Wedge dragster. Since then, Tony had stuck with slingshots, running 6.28 at 237 miles an hour and blowing away many of the rear-engine dragsters. But he had finally gone the rear-engine route, debuting this car at the 73 Winter Nationals. A 218-inch chassis was bent up by Kent Fuller and fitted with a 489 Keith Black Hemi. Doug Cruz made the candy gold and orange painted body, while Tony stitched up one of his own interiors. The car had already shown its potential, running a 6.03 at 238 in the States and a 6.30 on a recent trip to Japan. Clive Skilton's new car for 73 was another American import, being the ex-Cool & Olson car. The 235-inch wheelbase chassis came out of Woody Gilmore's race car engineering shop in Downey, California. The car had won the 72 Winter Nationals, and Clive had been over to the 73 Winter Nationals to run the car along with Dennis Priddle before they both came home with their new cars. This is one of the first round races at the first weekend of the series, which saw 7 Top Fuel cars entered. Clive Skilton was top of the pile in qualifying, followed by Tony Nancy, Dennis Priddle, Roland Pratt, Mike Hutchison, Alan Herridge, and lastly Norm Wilcox, who used both lanes in Mr. Rebel on a wild 11-second pass. In this first round race, Tony Nancy came out alongside Mike Hutchison. Hound Dog pulled a giant wheel stand, running 7.72 as Nancy stormed ahead to a 6.90 at 213 miles an hour. Nancy was knocked out in the semis following a controversial staging battle with Roland Pratt, and the Top Fuel Eliminator went to Dennis Priddle in Mr. 6. Race of the series came on the final weekend when Norm Wilcox faced Tony Nancy in the Top Fuel semi-finals. Watch the front wheels leave the ground as Nancy begins his burnout. After the burnouts, both cars carefully edged into stage. As the amber light blinked, Norm was gone, with Nancy hard on his heels. In the fastest race ever seen outside America, the rear-engine car won with a 6:59 at 221, as Norm Wilcox wasted a quicker 6:55, pulling a red light. Final of top fuel, and Clive Skilton comes out to face Nancy. Ken hits the slow motion button again as both cars perform long smoky burnouts. The tension was building. If Clive won, then Dennis Priddle would take the overall series win. If Nancy won, then he would take it. With Clive's Donovan motor not fully on song, Nancy was favourite, but after the burnout, Tony's clutch locked, forcing him to shut off, and Clive soloed for the win. Viking, the Swedish injected Chrysler Capri funny car, turned up for the series, but unfortunately entered its practice run with a broken transmission. Entered by National Drag Racer magazine, the new Chevy-powered Capri Pro Stocker music machine was driven by Jeff Hauser. After a few problems, it eventually ran a 12:89 after Don Beadle and Clive Skilton had appeared in the engine compartment. Stripteaser received some attention in the pits. This was the last season for Freddie Whittle in shutdown, as he sold the car to Mick Hall in '74. This was also the last season for the Gledo brothers motorcycle. Now running Chevy power, it was sold to Al O'Connor at the end of the year. Anders Lantz was back out with his rat-powered Plymouth Coupe and was this time entered in senior comp, which he won with a 10:39 at 135 miles an hour. Here's another look at Rick Fielding's Imagination 6 Topolino with blown 1.5 litre Ford power. The old Hillbillies Topolino had been broken up in '72. Bruce Brown had the injected rat, while the rest went to Colin Deans, Ray Tucker, Peter Lane and Glenn Searle, who renamed the car Ear-Splitting Loudon Boomer and fitted a small block Chevy. The old Invader Viva funny car was now run by Phil Carlisle and Ben Martin. A 283 had been fitted, and 4 Webers from a Formula 5000 car fed Fury heads, which had come from Dave Stone's Opus 1. Dick Sharp's Dorset horn ran 7 litres of Pontiac power. The homemade 78-inch wheelbase chassis was covered by a glass replica 835 body. After a 20-year layoff, Dick came back out again in 1997 to race with the Wild Bunch. The funny cars were back out at the final weekend of the series at Santa Pod. With Don Shoemaker back in the USA, Alan Herridge was let loose in the Stardust funny car for a match race with Paula Murphy. Paula came out first and recorded an excellent 7:19 at 193 miles an hour. Then it was Bootsy's turn in Stardust. Under the watchful eye of Paula's mechanic, Fat Jack Banyan, Alan performed a nice smoky burnout and then ran a 770 at 188 miles an hour on only his second drive of an American funny car. Then it was time for the big race. After two storming burnouts, the cars reversed back to the line. The lights rolled, and Paula got the whole shot with Bootsy in hot pursuit. At the top end he was gaining when there was a big bang as the blower exploded and sent the roof 50 feet into the air. The cause of the explosion was that the 5 gallons of fuel in the tank was not enough. The mixture weakened and bang. Paula Murphy set a new funny car record of 7.18, while Alan, despite blowing, ran 199 miles an hour in 7.35 seconds. He was towed back down the strip in the battered machine to the applause of the crowd, who knew that they would see more funny car action from Britain's most experienced drag racer after fiberglass repairs had repaired the car. As a farewell to the appreciative crowd, Paula Murphy came out again to perform 3 burnouts before returning to the States, leaving the car behind in the very capable hands of Nobby Hills and Owen Hayward. John Whitmore won Senior Dragster in fine style, hoisting the E-Class record to an out-of-sight 155 miles an hour, one of the greatest achievements by a British driver.
John Whitmore takes another middle dragster win.
Time now for a switch of venues to Blackbushe for the 208 Hot Car Grand Nationals on August the 19th. Straight into Top Fuel as Clive Skilton brings out Revolution 4 to face Dennis Priddle in the repainted Mr. 6. After a suspiciously early leave, Clive took the win with a 7.59 at 202 as Dennis broke the rear end on an 8.28 run. Ed Shaver now had a body on his Mark Stratton built rear engine funny car and was out to see if it handled any better. After a good straight smoky start, the car turns left as the tyres bite at half track. Pete Andrews brings out the wild Maxing's toy, Corvette, for a qualifier alongside Doug Rose. Dick Sharp won senior competition altered in Dorset Horn. In this race he takes out Motorcycle. Second round of the Top Fuel round robin saw Roland Pratt, now running the ex-Skilton 446 stroker motor in Revolution 3, face Clive Skilton in Revolution 4. Roland proved that he was definitely one of the big boys now by defeating Clive despite doing untold nasties to the motor at the top end. Unfortunately, the clocks chose this moment to go on the blink. The only times were for Clive, who ran a 7.74 at 192. Dennis and Roland both broken, Skilton closed the show with a solo that was adjudged the winner of the round robin series. Final of Top Street went to Pete Andrews, who smoked all the way to a 12.05 as Doug Rose ran a 13.76. Back to Santapod for the European Grand Prix on the 15th and 16th of September. Ed Shaver's back out in his rear engine funny car, now painted in Castrol colours. He spent the weekend trying to get it to run straight. The two American funny cars returned for the first time since the internationals. Just after starting the repaired Stardust, another bang was heard. This time one of the heads had split in half as the cylinder hydraulicked. Another head was found and fitted, and the two funny cars lined up. Owen Hayward was having trouble staging. The motors were getting hot, so Stu Bradbury signalled for the lights to roll. Stardust recorded 8.11.185 as Owen went up in smoke, but put in a very gallant effort as he gradually got used to the 2,000 brake horsepower machine. back to Blackbushe for the finals on September the 30th. John Anderson was back over from Sweden, and he came out to face Dennis Priddle, who this time had decided to bring Mr. Revel, leaving Mr. Six at home. After the burnouts, Dennis's crew gave an excellent demonstration of how not to pull the car back. First, one of the crew releases the parachute, then the guy in the red jacket trips over it and gets run over by the left-hand slick. Confusion follows, and the cars are eventually shut down as they repack the chute. Then Dennis smoked to an 8.05 to put out John Anderson, who shut off to a 12.78. Dennis went on to take the final over Clive Skilton. As usual, the 1974 season was preceded by the Crystal Palace Custom Car Show. Star attractions were the two Santapod funny cars. This is Bob Rothwell's Model Y. Mickey Bray took Visitor's Choice Award with Pinball Wizard. Since taken over the running of the Paula Murphy STP Funny Car, Nobby Hills had had it repainted and renamed Hound Dog 7. Best paint went to Simon Taylor's Corvette, which featured a mech spray paint job. This is Brian Godper's VW powered Honky Trike. Best Altered trophy went to Phil Alson in his repainted Sneaky T. This is Ronnie Picardo's Buick pickup truck, which was usually parked behind the start line at the Santa Pod. Much like today, VWs were very popular in 1974. Best interior went to Cliff Jones with his Devon Cream A40, and Best Model T went to Nick Butler with Nickelodeon. This is Maurice Morley's Corvette, which ran in Top Street. This is Peter Crane's Easy Riding Pro Stocker, which in '74 was sold to Mustafa Errol as Peter moved up to Top Fuel. Ed Shaber's Birds of Paradise Chevelle only managed runner-up in the Paint Award. yeah, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was there as well. Back to the action, and Alan Herridge continued to campaign Stardust in 74 and 75, managing to get into the sixes at the 74 Big Go with a 6.87. Owen Hayward remained in the low sevens all year, but at the first Big Meet of 75 ran a 6.76 to take the European record. Big news for the Hound Dog team in 74 was the debut of the beautiful new Hound Dog 8 rear-engine Fueler. Sadly, at the same meeting, Harold Ball took a ride in the Hound Dog 6 and wrote the car off as he lost it at the top end. Parked up on the right in this shot is the twin-engined injected Chevy dragster of Adam Blount called Mouse Organ. Peter Crane was having a go in Farfly before stepping into his new imported rear-engine Fueler, Stormbringer. Roy Phelps gives Nobby a hand as they fire up Hound Dog 8 on the rollers. Hound Dog 8 looked very similar to Tony Nancy's Revelina, reason being it was built by Nobby from plans sent over by Tony Nancy. Fiberglass Repairs had sprayed it to match the funny car. An Ed Pink 426 had been stroked to 490, and it was the first British Fueler to be fitted with a reverse gear. After 3 meetings, Hound Dog 8 was in the sixes and went on to record a 6.26 before being sold to Santapod, who turned it into the Needle for DLT to drive. Shaking up the Pro Stock ranks in 74 was Colin Mullen and Adrian York with their newly imported heavy Pro Stocker. The 72 Dodge Charger was an ex-Sox and Martin car, complete with 16-plug 426 Hemi and 3-speed Lenco. This was the view the other Pro Stock competitors usually got, as Heavy was a good half-second ahead. Melvin Woodin had a nice matching tow vehicle for his Blue Rose 61 Ford Falcon. Since buying the old Motorcycle, Al O'Connor had rebuilt the 302 Chevy and swapped the Jag box for a Muncie. Mick Hall was getting used to his new drive, Shutdown. Dennis Priddle debuted a new funny car in 74. The Hillman Avenger body was supplied by Fiberglass Repairs and sprayed in the colours of STP, the new sponsors for 74. Mr. Revel also received an STP paint job, and Mr. Six was sold to Ros Pryor, who renamed it the Fast Lady. The NDRC's biggest ever meet was spoiled by rain. Held at Silverstone in September 1974, it attracted 200 entries, including many Swedish cars, and from America, the Hog Slayer Double Norton of Tom Christensen. The top comporters and funny cars were to be run in one big eliminator, but the right-hand lane was too damp, so a time trial was held to decide a winner. First out was Dave Stone in his fuel altered, who ran a fantastic 7.99 at 160 miles an hour in the damp conditions. Debuted his newly imported 454 Chevy altered at this meeting called Dream Machine. It was originally run by Bill Lance and Sherm Gunn. In the States, the car ran with an aerofoil in front of the driver. The RAC scrutineer deemed that it may cause an obstruction if he had to get out the car in a hurry, so it was removed. A half pass netted a 10.37. Then Roland Pratt brought out the new Hillbillies Reliant Funny Car. The body originally came from Mark Stratton's Whistler altered from '69. Since then, Ed Shaver had used it on his S2C show car. A new chassis had been knocked up by Roland and a 392 fitted, complete with wreath blower. On this run, Roland lost the blowout. Then it was Priddle who did 2 burnouts in an effort to get some traction. After a bit of bother staging, Dennis recorded top time of 7.86 at 182 miles an hour, still hazing the tyres despite the burnouts. Sweden, Leif Dayback came out in the Saint, a Chevy-powered Volvo funny car. Like Roland Pratt, he too lost the blowout off the line. Saturday, when the strip was dry, Tom Christensen had run UK's first 8 with an 8.98, 160 miles an hour. But today the conditions were against him, and he had to settle for a 9.27, 149 miles an hour against John Clift, who ran a 9.63 at 139. Two weeks later, and the sun was shining at Snetterton. Tom Christensen was still here, and by the end of the day, he ran an unbelievable 8.81. None of the British bikes could come close to this, and needless to say, TC walked off with the top bike trophy. Also back out was Keith Harvey, now with a modified aerofoil fitted a bit further back, and the RAC scrutineer was happy. The car was built for pro-comp racing in the States and featured a longer than normal chassis and no nitro in the tank. Sadly, both T-Rat and Shutdown received longer chassis in '75 as pro-comp was introduced over here, bringing to an end real fuel-altered racing in this country. And Stardust made their first ever appearance at an NDRC meet and ran a match race with Dennis Priddle. Alan was in the lane with a bump in it, which he managed to hit, sending him wildly out of shape, but Dennis took the win with a 7:26.190. I don't think Stardust appeared at an NDRC meet again.